Again did the earth shift. Again did the nights grow short, and the great days go long. And the people of the earth were glad and celebrated, each in their own ways. These solstice words by Diane Lee Mumby reflect the timeless wonder we feel in our nights and days are shaped by the tilt of the earth away from or toward the sun. Seasons are created. Weather is influenced. Plants and animals respond. Our whole essence is attached and is affected, and it has been that way for thousands and thousands of years. Today is 2 days before Christmas, 3 days before Kwanzaa, and Hanukkah ended last Sunday. All celebrate our celebrations of light. All are opportunities to embrace the wonder of the changes of the globe, our lives, and our experiences. Today, December 21, it's the first day of winter. I'm confused. It's my problem. Hey, we're living through the shortest and longest day of the year. And the rain's going to be here this afternoon, and we're going to be warm, and we're going to say it's not winter, but it is. It is around the world, and Mother Nature knows, and she keeps her patterns. And the days are getting longer and the nights shorter. The light is returning, and we in Florida know that better than most people. Today we recognize and celebrate the fact by retelling the story of a myth about some of the native people of our area, of our nation, and about the gift of light.
So long, long ago, when the world was still new, the Inuit people lived in never-ending darkness near the far northern end of the earth. And all around them was frozen land and ice. And the only light they had was from the stars in the sky and the lamps of seal oil. They had never seen nor even heard of daylight. Never heard of it until it was first explained to them by Crow. Crow was a visitor who traveled far and wide in the Northlands and to the south. The Crow told the Inuit people of the lands he had seen and of the thing called daylight. At first, they did not believe him, but then they realized that Crow could fly much farther than they could ever travel, especially with all the darkness around them. "Now what is this daylight you speak of?" asked the people. And Crow replied, "It is brighter than any star or flame. It lights up the whole sky like lightning, but instead of a flash, it stays." The people were fascinated. They said, "How can this be? Imagine if we had some of this daylight. We could fish and hunt for longer. We could see when the polar bear comes and the cracks in the ice." And the people were fascinated. They asked Crow to tell the story of the daylight again and again. And then they began to beg Crow to bring some of this daylight back from his travels. Crow was always eager to help the Inuit. They were good friends. "I will try," he said. "The daylight is very far away, and it will be a long trip." Now Crow flew for many miles over the frozen land until he saw a glimmering light on the horizon. As he last reached the land of daylight and flew down to rest, exhausted from his long flight. And above him, the sky was bright blue with white, fluffy clouds. And when he awoke from his sleep, Crow thought about what he had to do. The Inuit people were generous. Because food was scarce in their land, they were always happy to share what little they had. Crow knew that not all people were like this, and he thought that perhaps the people who owned the daylight would not be so giving. He might have to steal the daylight. Crow had landed near a village that lay beside a wide river. Soon he saw a girl come to the river and dip a bucket in to get some water. She turned to go back to the village. Some say that Crow followed her, staying in the shadows of the trees. Others say that he turned himself into a speck of dust and settled onto her coat. In either case, the crow was with the girl when she entered the Snow Village lodge of her mother, who happened to be the chief of the village people. It was cozy inside the lodge and brightly lit. Crow looked around and saw a box that glowed with light. That must be the daylight, he thought to himself. On a rug in the middle of the room, a young girl played with a toy. Her mother, the chief, was nearby. Crow had an idea. Some say as a speck of dust, Crow floated over to the girl's ear. Or maybe Crow somehow just whispered. But he said, "Tell her that you want to play with the little ball of sunlight." And the young girl began to cry. The chief became concerned. "Why are you crying, my daughter?" The girl repeated the crow's words, and the chief, who loved her daughter, took out a small bit of sunlight from the box and gave it to the girl. And then the crow whispered again to the girl, "Tell her you want to put it on a string and play with it outside." Once again, the girl cried, and once again the chief did what the girl asked. She tied a piece of special string to the ball of sunlight and gave it to her daughter and took her outside to play. The traditional story has it that Crow quickly transformed himself from a speck of dust into a bird. If that was even the case, and he swooped down and grabbed the string from the girl and took off with the ball of sunlight before anyone realized what was happening. But a very recent version of this myth has it go this way. Crow transformed himself into bird form, getting ready to grab the string and light away from the girl. But the girl saw Crow and looked right at him, transfixed by his sudden appearance and his shining black feathers. The girl had never seen any bird so beautiful and so close up. Slowly and silently, she reached out her hand, holding the small ball of light toward the crow. Slowly and silently, Crow plucked out one of his feathers and placed it at the girl's feet. And then Crow grasped the string in his beak, and with the ball of light firmly attached, he took off up into the sky, breathing a sigh of thanks. And on the crow flew, with the ball of sunlight dangling from his beak. And in the far north, the Inuit people saw a spark of light coming towards them in the darkness. And it grew larger and larger until they could see Crow flapping his beautiful black wings. And the Inuit people were overjoyed. Crow called out that it was only a small piece of sunlight, for that was all he could carry, and it was only enough to last for 6 months. Even so, his friends were very grateful and thanked him again and again. And then the crow dropped the ball, and it shattered on the ground, spreading light everywhere. The sky grew bright, and the snow and ice sparkled, and then the people could see the colors all around. And then the box of light glowed, and any of our children that would like to come down and help us spread the light as we hear, "Here comes the sun."
Okay. Okay, thank you. The light's out. The light is out for us to see. It's available to us. It surrounds us, literally and also figuratively. It is within us. And our children today, through their stories, showed us that all people have some kind of interpretation of how that happened. But the miracle is we all have an imagination, and we also have recognition. And those two things are timeless and most important, because we can imagine and then we can believe. We can set a notion in our hearts and our minds and strive to fulfill the meaning of that notion. That the light comes back, it's proven. And we are students, and we are agents, and we are part of that light, carrying it, returning it to its place, and knowing that the seasons will come and go, and all that's supposed to happen will happen. There's a pattern, but in that pattern is the creativity of how we respond, how we create our crops, how we treat one another in relationships. All that we are as human beings becomes possible in the fact that we can imagine and we can believe. So in the time of the dark winter, when the light is scarce, we remember what's truly important, the message and the gifts of the season, and that is we sustain ourselves through our imagination and through our beliefs. And those beliefs change and vary because we learn to deeply love more fully. So here comes the sun. We will always remember you, the people said to the crow. To this day, the Inuit live half a year in darkness and half a year in daylight. They are friends with the crow, and they appreciate their times of daylight and times of darkness. May it be so with us. Go now to your holidays. Celebrate them with an ideal that is beyond the commercialism and beyond the expectation, but an ideal that says we recognize the miracle we are a part of. Just for a few moments, even with all the sham, all the disappointments, all the frustrations. In the midst of our being, we have consciousness, we have awareness, we have a temper, we have an attitude. And those are the mechanisms and the qualities that make us human beings. And from that abilities and from those elements of who we are, we recognize other ideas and elements of creativity and imagination and wonder. So you can conjure magic by what you imagine and what you believe. Find that magic for a few moments this holiday season. Hopefully it'll be with loved ones. If it's not, find someone that you can appreciate and be with them. But reach out and embrace the wonder that you are, recognize it in your own being, and claim it from others, because those are the gifts of holidays. And all our stories and all our myths and all our legends speak simply to that. Find those moments of joy and happiness.